It's March 15th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with potential mass resignations by medical school professors. The professors will decide tonight whether to resign en masse. Now, the government plans to allocate 20% of the increase in medical school admissions in the Greater Seoul area, with the remaining 80% going to schools in non-capital regions. The Korea Economic Research Institute believes South Korea's economy will rebound to the pre-pandemic levels, nearing 2% with strong exports like chips. But recovery in domestic consumption won't start until the latter half of the year, when interest rate cuts are expected. The world's most powerful rocket built by SpaceX made it into space in its third test flight from Texas, reaching record heights on Thursday morning local time. But the Starship failed to return to Earth. Professors at medical schools in South Korea continued their talks on possible resignations Thursday night, ahead of making a final decision tonight. The government proposed allocating 80% of the increased medical school seats to non-capital areas. Song Hee-jin reports.
There is only a day left for medical school professors to determine whether to collectively hand in their resignations. The Medical Professors Association of Korea, made up of professors from 33 med schools, began holding an online meeting at 8 p.m. Thursday to deliberate on this decision. They say this will be their way of showing support and safeguarding junior doctors and med school students who have chosen to walk out or take leave in protest against the government's plan to expand the med school quota. This is raising concerns over a deepening medical crisis, as many concurrently serve as doctors in hospitals. The government is trying to prevent any resignations by the professors, but has also made it clear that it will complete its reforms of the healthcare system.
Reducing numbers of doctors in the past due to fiscal pressures, when we should have been increasing them, has made the current reform more challenging. The government will complete healthcare reform to safeguard lives and health, avoiding past mistakes.
Meanwhile, amidst the plan to increase medical school enrollment by 2,000 students starting next year, it has been reported that the government is considering allocating 20% of the new quota to the capital region, including Seoul, and 80% to the rest of the country. Also, to address regional disparities in healthcare and strengthen essential medical services such as in pediatrics and obstetrics and gynecology, the government will push for a reduction in people's dependence on the so-called Big Five hospitals in Seoul.
We'll bolster local healthcare to ensure timely treatment for all illnesses, from mild to severe. The government will innovate by developing small but strong hospitals and improve networking among them to address the abnormal over-reliance on the capital region.
The government will increase financial support to hospitals in vulnerable areas and elevate regional hospitals to the level of those in the capital region. Song Hee-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea will see a 2% growth this year on the back of strong exports, according to the Korea Economic Research Institute. Now, 2% growth would mean a rebound to the pre-pandemic levels. Shin-se-byuk has more.
In its latest economic outlook report released on Friday, the Korea Economic Research Institute forecasts that South Korea's economy will likely grow by 2% in 2024, returning to pre-COVID-19 levels. This forecast sits below earlier growth rates projected by major institutions, 2.1% by the Bank of Korea, 2.3% by the IMF, and 2.2% by the OECD. KERI points out that global economic improvements and a surge in exports could drive recovery this year. However, domestic spending is expected to rebound only in the second half of the year, following anticipated interest rate cuts in late 2024. The report also warns that the recovery could be hampered by the economic downturn caused by higher interest rates and inflation, emphasizing that efficient management of private debt will be crucial for this year's economic performance. Furthermore, KERI cautioned that a 2% growth rate may not be achievable if China's economic slowdown drags on. By sectors, private consumption, a key driver of domestic demand, is projected to see modest growth at 1.6%. This is largely attributed to decreased spending power due to household debt repayments. Inflation is expected to increase by 2.5%, aided by a weaker dollar and stable raw material costs, including international oil prices. Exports, which saw setbacks last year due to the IT sector's downturn, China's economic struggles and rising geopolitical tensions, are expected to rebound to 3.6%. The optimism is based on the global economic revival and an uptick in demand within the IT sector. Regarding South Korea's current account balance, KERI forecast a surplus of $51 billion, bolstered by an expanded goods balance surplus. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Bitcoin keeps setting new record highs. It's nearly doubled in price since late January. Will this upward trend last, or is it time for a cool-off? We're joined by Professor Bang Min-jung. Welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you for having me today.
Thanks for joining us. So, Bitcoin on a rally. For our viewers who may not be so familiar with this trend, what's the reason? What's driving this rally?
Yeah, actually, the recent rally in Bitcoin's price nowadays has attributed from several factors. Maybe the firstly is the anticipation of Bitcoin halving events scheduled for this April is a significant driver for these days' rally. Actually, this event reduces the reward for mining the prices, the rewards, and also effectively halves the supply of new Bitcoin due to the perceived scarcity value. And additionally, there has been a surge capital of new US Bitcoin spot in ETFs, also further fueling the Bitcoin's rally price nowadays. Actually, these new ETFs increase the interest or some trading volumes, indicating of growing preferences among investors for Bitcoin exposure. Regulated financial products makes also these rallies nowadays. And also more broader strategy and outlooks. Also, a lot of investors have now some positive outlooks on cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, because there have been expectations due to the interest rate cuts by Federal Reserve interest rates reduced nowadays. So actually, in summarize all of these key factors, the combination of the launch of new Bitcoin ETFs and the expectations of Bitcoin halving events, and all of these factors could lead to nowadays Bitcoin prices rally.
I see. Well, some say, though, patterns suggest a recent Bitcoin rally could be nearing completion. Is a cool-off period imminent?
Yes, these days the Bitcoin's cool-off is expected because in the past, Bitcoin's cool-off period seasons now be expected because predictions of 30% corrections in the post-halving this year. However, on the one hand, some anticipate a potential this cool-off period following the significant price surge, but on the other hand, others believe that the rally could lead to a speculative blow-up top in this year, a period of rapid price increase followed by a sharp decline.
And when Bitcoin went up, the price of gold came down. And when Bitcoin cooled off, the price of gold went up. But now they both are on the rise. Professor Ba, what's your take on this?
Actually, in the past, gold and Bitcoin reacted and showed different reactions and different prices and showed different reactions because they have in the different market values. However, nowadays they show the same and cool movements performances now. In the past, Bitcoin is a kind of new digital assets. It means cryptocurrency. However, gold has been considered a traditional store value because these days shows the same as similar directions in price perspectives. The main reason is can be considered as they because the perceptions of users and investors. In the past, many researchers, and some of including me, also predicted Bitcoin and gold show the similar directions in the future, because the main reason is that the users and investors' sentiment have shows the different directions in the future. Because nowadays, some of concerns about inflation rise, and the investors tend to incline their funds, alternative assets, not cash, including Bitcoin and gold. These shows these days the different, not the same directions of Bitcoin and gold price fluctuations.
Definitely. Now, we have to talk about El Salvador sitting on a $84 million profit from its Bitcoin holdings. How did that happen?
El Salvador is, as we already know, that is the first country adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender. So naturally, they profited from its Bitcoin's holdings, and its prices value up. They got a lot of money profit nowadays. So I think the El Salvador's adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender is a broader strategy to their country to enhance national economy or some enhance financial inclusion and also increase investment to their country.
Right, and the IMF had long warned El Salvador to ditch Bitcoin as a legal tender, but the country's president has some strong beliefs about Bitcoin, doesn't he?
Yes, at first, IMF called El Salvador to cancellation the adoption of legal tender for Bitcoin because there are a lot of significant risks because Bitcoin, including cryptocurrency, has a lot of significant risks in terms of high volatility or some foundational stability, and also significant risks can be predicted. So IMF canceled the cancellation for the adoption of Bitcoin as a legal tender. However, nonetheless, the president of Nayib Bukele believes that only Bitcoin can enhance their country's economic statement and also financial stability. So I think these President Nayib Bukele's belief to Bitcoin can now make some of a lot of profits in their country.
All right, Professor Fang Minjian, thank you so much for your insight this morning. You have a great day.
Thank you.
A mega rocket developed by SpaceX for future Mars exploration conducted its third test flight on Thursday. The Starship flew halfway around the world for 48 minutes, but was lost before re-entry. Lee Seung-ja has more.
SpaceX's Starship, a mega rocket designed for future Mars exploration, lifted off on Thursday from the Starbase facility in Boca Chica, Texas. It was the third launch following two tests that both ended explosively last year. And while this launch didn't end successfully, it did achieve a number of milestones, getting SpaceX closer to its goal. The rocket flew halfway around the world for about 48 minutes, reaching a maximum speed of over 26,000 kilometers per hour and an altitude of 234 kilometers. However, when Starship began its descent and re-entered the atmosphere, red flames appeared due to frictional heat, and it is presumed that the spacecraft was burned up during re-entry as the live broadcast of the rocket was cut off. While Thursday's launch fell short of its plan to splash down in the Indian Ocean after a 65-minute flight, it provided much-needed data for the team. The world's largest and most powerful rocket to date reached orbital speed for the first time and flew a record distance. With the data it gathered, it's now in a position to move on to more complex test flights, such as carrying NASA astronauts to the moon's surface. Just like SpaceX's Falcon 9 rockets, the Starship is designed to be fully reusable and is considered crucial in the company's mission to carry humans to Mars for the very first time. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Today, people in Russia are voting for a new president. Although state-run polls suggest President Putin's win is a given, if he wins again, he'll have been Russia's leader for longer than Joseph Stalin, who ran the then Soviet Union for 29 years. Our Kim Jong-sil has this report.
It's presidential election day in Russia, and we already know the probable winner: President Vladimir Putin. The election, which will last until Sunday, could provide Putin with a sense of reassurance that he seeks over the war with Ukraine.
The polls suggest that Putin's win is a sure thing and that he will win with a more than 80% approval rating. In this case, he may continue the war in Ukraine with more confidence.
More than 112 million Russians over the age of 18 are eligible to vote from Friday, along with 1.9 million Russians living overseas.
The question is how many people vote. I mean, we know his approval rating can mount to 86%. It's the voting rate that will be more important this time.
Another takeaway from this election is that residents in the 4 regions of Ukraine occupied by Russia, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, are casting their votes. With the election giving momentum to Putin and his policies, experts say he may want to use this opportunity to conclude the war with Ukraine.
Putin may feel it'd be burdensome to drag the war out, as he plans to start something new with a new term. I think if the US or Ukraine are prepared, Putin may want an opportunity to potentially end the war.
Putin's renewed leadership would also impact the dynamics on the Korean peninsula, with Moscow and Pyongyang rapidly boosting ties in recent months.
If Russia further strengthens its ties with the North while distancing itself from the South, it will have a huge impact on South Korea's national security and stability on the Korean peninsula.
Experts added it's important for the South Korean government to come up with measures to cope with Putin's new term, while further preparing for the outcome of the U.S. presidential election in November. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
With the first ever Major League Baseball regular season games to be held in South Korea, the San Diego Padres were the first to arrive in the early hours of Friday morning. The Padres, who are led by some of the biggest names in the majors, and also boast 2 former KBO stars in Kim Ha-sung and Ko Seok. They arrived at the Incheon International Airport at around 1:30 a.m. to prepare for this horror series against the LA Dodgers. Now, the Dodgers will arrive later this afternoon. The 2 teams will play exhibition games against the Kium Heroes, the LG Twins, and the South Korean national baseball team early next week. The West Coast rivals will then face off at Seoul's Gochuk Stadium on March 20th and 21st.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. On Thursday, China, Iran and Russia completed all exercises of the 4-day trilateral naval drills in the Gulf of Oman. According to the Chinese Navy, the joint maritime exercises, titled Security Bond 2024, have further promoted trilateral exchanges and cooperation. The drills began on Tuesday with a focus on firing at sea, communication, and simulation of anti-piracy and rescue missions, with the scenario involving hijacked merchant vessels. The Chinese Navy deployed their destroyer Urumqi among other ships, whilst Russia dispatched a guided missile cruiser and Iran more than 10 vessels for the joint exercise. An officer of the Chinese Navy said that the 3 sides took turns to command and coordinate closely. U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on Thursday publicly criticized Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and called for new elections in Israel. Addressing the Senate, Schumer said Netanyahu had lost his way with his operations in Gaza, too willing to tolerate the civilian toll. He also said the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel and that an election is needed to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel. Schumer also urged for negotiations for a two-state solution, saying the rejection of such a plan would be a grave mistake. Democrat Schumer is the highest-ranking Jewish elected U.S. official and a long, strong supporter of Israel. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said Schumer's comments were his and not those of the Biden administration.
Good afternoon, everyone.
In Japan, a Tokyo district court on Thursday ruled that the country's current ban on same-sex marriages is in a state of unconstitutionality. A district court in Sapporo had also this week ruled that Japanese civil code that limits marriage to only the opposite sex is unconstitutional and discriminatory, saying that enacting same-sex marriage does not seem to cause disadvantages or harmful effects. While polls show that 70% of the public support same-sex unions, the Liberal Democratic Party of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has been opposing the implementation of homosexual marriages. Currently, Japan is the only G7 country that does not recognize same-sex unions nor offer legal protection. In East Asia, Taiwan remains the only state that allows same-sex marriages. Global chocolate prices are expected to rise even higher as a shortage of cocoa beans affecting African cocoa plants. In the Ivory Coast, which produces almost half the world's cocoa, some processing plants have stopped buying beans and some have shut down as even global commodity traders struggle to source beans. Ghana, the world's second largest producer, had operations at most of its 8 processing plants temporarily suspended over recent months. Ghana's state-owned cocoa processor CPC said it is only operating at 20% capacity due to the shortage. Retail prices for chocolate rose almost 12% in the US in 2023 and are expected to soar further with continued poor harvests.
Good morning. Today's forecast calls for more pleasant early spring weather. Temperatures will go up even higher this afternoon, making temperature gaps of 20 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country. It does feel like we are going through 2 seasons in a day, so let's dress accordingly. Mild temperatures triggered high dust levels, so have a good face mask ready. The central regions will be trapped in dusty air all day today, and tomorrow looks to be a dusty one as well. Meanwhile, East Coast regions need to stay on high alert against wildfire. Dry and wind advisories are in place. Back to the readings now. Afternoon highs will hike to 15 degrees here in the capital. Gwangju topping out at 19 degrees Celsius. Warmer than average temperatures will accelerate the blooming dates of spring flowers this year. The spring warming trend will hit its peak tomorrow at 17 degrees Celsius here in Seoul. Then rain in southern regions this weekend will bring back the temperatures to the norms, and next week will not be as warm as this week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back next Monday at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.